Nearly 1,000 overcrowded bioengineered mice, vials of blood, and this list of infectious diseases, including malaria, E. coli, chlamydia, COVID, and many others. That was what was found in this warehouse in Reedley. A city code enforcement officer first noted the illegal lab in December. She says a signed lease for the property shows the company moved in from its Fresno location to Reedley in October of 2022. Just a little over a month before the lab was discovered. For the first half of 2023, the process of cleaning the Reedley location was stuck in court. The hazardous electricity wires without permits, including added outlets for running refrigerators and freezers, unmarked stored highly flammable chemicals, and medical devices in cardboard boxes, made fire probability high and the risk of a possible explosion. That's what prompted Reedley Fire Chief Jerry Isaac to send this letter to the Reedley City Manager. In it, the chief outlined a planned evacuation zone in case of an emergency, which included the City of Reedley Police Department, Reedley City Hall, Kings Canyon Unified School District main office, and 12 homes. Due to a gas station right next door, the chief wrote in the letter that, quote, the concern increased of a potential disaster for our city, end quote. The letter was instrumental in the city getting warrants to go inside of the property, and since then, the city, county, FBI, CDC, and other state and local health agencies have been approved to start cleaning it up. In April, they euthanized over 700 of the mice. At the beginning of July, chemicals were removed, and right now, the cleanup continues.
Something like this could be in every city in the nation, and we wouldn't be able to regulate it the way we should be able to regulate it.
New details tonight regarding the illegal lab in Reedley. Emails reveal the California Department of Public Health told Fresno County officials not to make information public once it found out about that lab.
Emails exchanged by the Fresno County Department of Public Health and the California Department of Public Health clear up a lot of questions that local, state, and local representatives have been asking. Why wait to share information about an illegal lab that potentially posed a threat to the public when it found out something was going on months ago? The county says it hoped to release some information in late March. Instead, CDPH put out this holding statement for the county to use, saying it was assessing the situation and the investigation was ongoing. The county responded, saying several agencies would be at the lab and would be wearing personal protective equipment, and whether it should still run with that statement since members of the public might notice them. The state said yes. When asked if there was any other information they wanted to share for the evolving issue, CDPH stated no. It did not want to say anything more publicly due to the active investigation. 2 days later, Fresno County officials revised the statement with input from the city of Reedley and sent it to CDPH for approval. CDPH responded, crossing out some words with a recommendation saying, quote, we suggest you not point to specific address and not mention PPE or law enforcement at this time, as we believe it could unnecessarily cause concern and questions. Joe Prado with the Fresno County Department of Public Health told Fresno County supervisors Tuesday the county and the city of Reedley wanted to be transparent, but their hands were tied.
As we're communicating with our federal and state agencies, they're making it very clear to us we cannot speak on this. This is our protocol. This is what they adhere to, and that they're not able to speak on an ongoing investigation. They've made that clear pretty much from day one.
The county says the FBI even requested it not release a lot of details. Prado says that's when the city and county of Fresno started to focus on what they could do. This includes requesting the company running the lab, Prestige Biotech, to provide a complete inventory of all materials on site that pose a public safety risk. But
they really had nothing for us. It was a lot of hemming and hawing, but no real information.
During this entire discovery dating back to October of 2020, Reedley City Manager Nicole Ziva says they did everything in their power to keep the public safe.
This was a bad player company, a bad actor company that was kicked out of Canada. They went to Texas. They got kicked out of Texas. They came to California. Kicked out of Fresno, went to Tulare. Kicked out of Tulare, went back to Fresno. Kicked out of Fresno, came to Reedley. This little David city took down Goliath with a green garden hose.
Fresno County Assistant Director of Public Health, Joe Prado, says, and court documents show, people associated with the lab told Reedley City and Fresno County officials they were located in China. We asked Prado whether or not the people involved were with the Chinese government, and here's what he said.
I can't confirm the connections to Chinese government. These are individuals, business owners that they've represented themselves to us that they live in China. That's to the extent that we are aware of. But confirmation to the government, I do not have any information in regards to that.
And city and county officials want to make it clear to the public that the public is not in as nearly as much danger as it was back in April when the letter from the chief was written, especially because since then the electricity has been turned off and several hazards have been removed.
Developing tonight, residents in Reedley now speaking out after investigators uncovered an illegal medical lab operating in an abandoned warehouse right in the middle of town. The Fresno County Department of Public Health filing an abatement order against the business after lab mice and biohazard waste was found improperly stored inside that lab.
Danny Jimenez has lived in Reedley for 60 years.
It was actually one of my second jobs I ever had here.
When he was young, Jimenez actually worked inside the now infamous warehouse located at 850 I Street.
I worked here years ago. It was a stone fruit manufacturing plant.
The warehouse has been the topic of conversation since the news came out that it was operating as an unauthorized medical lab, home to nearly 1,000 lab mice and thousands of vials, many of which contained biohazard materials like blood and other substances.
I always drove by and looked into the docks right there, and there was times where there was vehicles in there was trucks in there was dump trucks in there and things like that.
Jimenez said he'd often heard rumors about it, but never believed them.
And then they put a green fence in front. I go, well, that's kind of strange. It's always been open. And they put a green fence there in front. And I thought that one when I said, okay, there's something going on.
Once he found out, though, he said he, along with many other people in town, was shocked.
All the rumors that I heard all these testing going on and things like that. And I was thinking, I didn't know what it was, but it did concern me. But when the word finally came out that it was, that what the steps measures that they took, I felt a lot better. But yeah, I was very concerned about what was going on in there with rumors, and most of that was pretty much true.
Fresno County health officials say getting a warrant to enter the Reedley lab was time-consuming and frustrating. It took them months, and according to these email exchanges provided in court documents, Universal Meditech and Prestige Biotech went out of their way to put up obstacles. On May 31st, the county made a request for permits and information on how the company planned to get rid of hazardous waste. A person identified only as David He responded with the plan to transfer all the waste from the Reedley location to 3900 East Blatella in Fresno. The company rep claiming they would be done moving everything by June 20th. The county then responded to the lab operators saying that was not an option, that they would need the required documents within 7 working days, and asked for more specific details. Universal Meditech stonewalled the county again, saying they needed more time and more information. Then the company flat out denied the existence of any infectious agents on the property. Finally, on June 13th, county officials stated the company was refusing to cooperate and they would move forward with shutting them down. In a Reedley City Council meeting held Tuesday night, residents still in shock and disbelief about the entire situation. Some clearly upset with the way the city has handled the situation.
A long line of people waiting to get into the Reedley City Council meeting Tuesday night.
The city was aware in December and then again in March, and they believe that it was not the public's right to know. Me and many others here tonight believe it was the public's right to know.
Inside, standing room only, which also sparked outrage.
I think you did a great disservice to your community by not having a facility large enough for them to all be here to ask questions of you.
Many people stepping up to the podium upset over being left in the dark about what was going on for more than 6 months. City Manager Nicole Ziba explaining she could not inform even the City Council any earlier. She was told by the FBI in December not to publicize what they discovered in the lab.
There are still things that we are not able to fully express. There are still investigations ongoing, One of the reasons we were told that this was important to keep undercover is because as soon as it hits the light of day, the players involved in these companies would scatter. And indeed, that is exactly what has happened.
Tuesday marked code enforcement's completion of the abatement of the lab. Ziba spent time debunking misinformation that has been circulating.
The conspiracy theories are abounding. We had one local politician get on a national news channel and say this was a Chinese illegal lab manipulating viruses to get out into the public. I assure you that is not what the Reedley situation is.
She also said no one who has gone in and out of the building, including herself, has contracted any kind of illness, which is why she's confident nothing infectious ever reached the public.
We knew as soon as we came in there wearing these big suits, the personal protective equipment, cleaning out the site, residents are going to be looking around going, what's going on? And that's exactly what happened. But again, CDPH made clear, do not explain what's taking place at this site.
And these emails are proof. As early as April 28th, the county tried to revise an initial statement from the state to include the address of the illegal lab in Reedley and explain why staff would be wearing personal protective equipment. The following Monday, the Deputy Director of Communications for the Department of Public Health wrote, "We suggest you not point to the specific address and not mention PPE or law enforcement at this time, as we believe it could unnecessarily cause concern and questions."
We asked them, how can we engage with the public? And those emails show the California Department of Public Health really wanted us to be limited in what we said to the public, and we followed that direction.
When Fox 26 News originally reported on these emails and how the county was told to keep quiet, the State Department of Public Health and even the governor's office contacted our newsroom requesting a correction.
Now that these emails have been requested by the media, by your station, and these emails are now coming to light, you can see exactly the conversations that were taking place between the county and the California Department of Public Health. So I leave it to the public to decide for themselves.
How much would it help if the State Department of Public Health or even the governor's office, which has now gotten involved, how much more would it help to have them actually hear boots on the ground, talking in front of the cameras and hopefully helping to put the kibosh on some of this stuff, or at least just clarify?
You know, let me tell you, with what's gone on in Reedley at this site, to me, it is an absolute travesty, and it's terrifying. The people in Reedley, I know, are very concerned with what's going on. Really, the governor's office should be here. Representatives from the state should be here talking not only to the residents of Reedley, but also the entire state of California, because to me, this is an issue that rises to that level. It is a bit frustrating that some of our partners are choosing to kind of back away and kind of wash their hands of this whole situation.
Of the illegal biological COVID lab discovered in Reedley in March of this year, it's first important to remember what this community, our nation, the world went through for the last 2.5, 3 years. The COVID pandemic went on for nearly 3 years. It's commonly believed that COVID resulted from a lab leak out of the Wuhan lab in China. Worldwide, there are 769 million cases of COVID that resulted in nearly 7 million deaths. In the United States, there have been 107 million cases and nearly 1.2 million deaths. In California, there have been 103,000 deaths. China's COVID-19 virus resulted in the destruction of lives, livelihoods, the economy, and business. Children were stupidly locked out of school for 2 years and were destroyed academically, socially, and emotionally. People lost their freedoms, were forced to get experimental vaccines, to wear ineffective masks, and were lied to over and over by the CDC and government officials. Any information that challenged the lies and the tyrannical mandates that were suppressed by social media. And we had officials locally that were silent and complicit with all the unconstitutional and destructive government orders. And now they're silent again. So what do we know about this lab in Reedley? Well, on March 3rd, the Reedley code enforcement officers investigated the site after seeing an illegally attached garden hose. On March 16th, the warehouse was inspected, and it was discovered that the lab was producing COVID-19. There is blood, tissue, bodily fluid samples, and thousands of vials with fluids that are not labeled. They also found 900 mice, 200 mice that were dead. On March 16th, the representative from the company, Prestige Biotech, potentially a China national, informed investigators, quote, "These mice were genetically engineered to catch and carry the COVID-19 virus," end quote. Prestige Biotech, that company, is licensed in Nevada, not California. One address listed for this company is a vacant building in Las Vegas. Substack reports that other addresses related to this company appear to be in China, though this can't be verified at this time. And they also report that, quote, "Thousands of packages were found as well, many with shipping labels from China," end quote. On May 4th, the CDC inspected the lab and found infectious agents that were both bacterial and viral in nature. Some of these include hepatitis B and C, rubella, malaria, E. coli, and pneumonia. Fresno Superior Court documents indicate that mice were involved in these experiments with COVID-19. The lab apparently illegally disposed of medical waste, and it's believed it went to the landfill. This can't be confirmed because the operators of the lab have not been forthcoming. Now, questions that must be answered and the public has a right to know. One, is this company from China or is it sponsored by the Chinese government? What was the purpose and goals of their experimenting with COVID-19 and having mice catch and carry the disease? What were they doing with all the bacterial and viral infectious agents found at the illegal lab? Two, are the people that were running and operating this lab Chinese nationals or American citizens? If they're not American citizens, are they here illegally? Three, and most importantly, why wasn't the public informed of this illegal lab and what was found? The Fresno County Department of Public Health, it's public health, has an obligation to notify the public of potential dangers, both past and present. During the COVID pandemic, their medical officer held weekly press conferences justifying ineffective, destructive lockdowns and mandates, and yet not even an acknowledgement to the public of the illegal and potentially dangerous activities at the lab. So he spent a week having the media come, telling the public things that were not true, supporting all of the tyrannical, destructive things that were taking place in our city, our county, our state, our nation. And then when a lab related to COVID-19 is found 5 months ago, no word. No word from him, no word from the Public Health Department, no word from the Board of Supervisors. Number four, the Board of Supervisors are also silent. This is similar to the crisis when foster children were found to be sleeping on floors in offices. They only addressed it when they were forced to because it became public through the media. This is disgraceful and represents a willful decision to hide from and shirk their duties as elected representatives of, guess what? The public. They're responsible to the public. These same Board of Supervisors were derelict in the responsibilities to the public during the pandemic. They were silent and complicit with all of Governor Newsom's destructive, unscientific lockdowns, mandates, and forcing kids out of school for 2 years. Now we have the same cowardice from the Board of Supervisors, and they're silent again when facing another crisis in the county, again related to COVID. The public has a right to know, what did the Board of Supervisors know about the lab, when did they know it, and why didn't they inform the public? 5, are there any current potential dangers to the public, as a result of these experiments and illegal dumping of medical waste that involved COVID-19 and potential infectious agents that are both bacterial and viral in nature. Are there any potential adverse impacts to the farms in the area? How about the people in Fresno County or even beyond the local area? We know COVID spread around the world. How can the public be assured no medical waste was disposed of in our water systems? Number 6, were any safety measures in place at this illegal lab to protect the public from spread of COVID or the infectious agents they were experimenting with? We believe COVID spread from the Wuhan lab, and it could have come from this lab as well. Number 7, Lemoore Naval Air Station is only 45 miles from this illegal lab. As was reported in Substack, quote, all of the F-18s for all the Navy's West Coast-based carriers are located at Lemoore. The F-18s are primary strike fighters for the United States Navy. In a war with China, these are the aircraft that we would rely upon to sink Chinese naval vessels and give us victory, end quote. The implications from the spread of a debilitating virus could be devastating to our nation's military readiness. Is the location of this illegal lab coincidence or purposeful? Now, what do we do with what we've got right now? Well, according to Joe Prado of the Fresno County Department of Health, there's currently no requirements for any lab, licensed or not, to report to the local public health department the biologicals or the testing that is being conducted. I call on the Board of Supervisors to immediately create a new law mandating this requirement in Fresno County, with the penalty of immediate shutdown if the lab is non-compliant. Additionally, there should be financial and criminal penalties for non-compliance. Secondly, Mr. Prado also stated, quote, if you don't receive public funding of any sort, you can, with private dollars, set up a laboratory in California and the United States, end quote, just like was done here. This must change on the state and the national level. There must be enough oversight to protect the public. This clearly isn't the case now, and it must change immediately. And lastly, I don't know when elected officials will learn who they work for. It's for the public. The public has a right to know that after March 3rd, 5 months ago, in a legal lab experimenting with mice with COVID-19 infectious agents, similarly as was done at the Wuhan lab 3 years ago, is going on in our backyard. The public had a right to know. The public has a right to know exactly what they know and when they knew it and what they intend to do about what's going on. Secondly, are there any other labs like this floating around? And what is happening with the people who are involved in this lab? These are the questions that I've been asked by the public. These are the questions that should be answered by the public. And the Fresno Board of Supervisors and the County Public Department of Health, Public Health, has an obligation to let people know what's going on.
Universal Meditech was approved for and received 2 federally funded loans, each one with the value of nearly $75,000.
They applied and received $150,000 in PPP loans, which were forgiven as well, which is very troubling because this, of course, is taxpayer dollars.
The first loan was approved back in April of 2020 and forgiven in July of 2021.
Now that we're finding that government dollars, they had applied for PPP loans, had received PPP loans, again, it's very troubling just seeing now today how they were operating. The
second loan, approved in February of 2021, was forgiven just 1 year later in February of 2022.
Prior to all of this, the facility located in the city of Fresno in 2019 was welcomed by the city of Fresno and operated there until the end of 2022.
Nathan Magsig, who represents District 5 for the Fresno County Board of Supervisors, said as they dig deeper into the unauthorized lab, it was apparent they were operating without any kind of oversight.
A lot of the test kits and materials that they have produced There's information on websites that some of those test kits had to be recalled because proper protocols weren't being followed.
And it was back in October of 2022 that a City of Fresno code enforcement officer also raised concerns about the building on Fortune Avenue and the chemicals located there.
And so as we worked together, our number one goal was to protect the public, contain the site, and then bring in state and federal agencies to assist with the cleanup and remediation of this particular site.
Now, Magsig said it's about looking ahead for some changes.
I'm very hopeful that at the state level and federal level, there will be legislation that comes out to prevent something like this happening into the future.
The known history of this company, originally Universal Meditech, spans nearly a decade. According to a court filing, it all began with the company's founding back in 2015 at an address in Tulare. Fast forward to February of 2019, an article from the Business Journal detailed the company's move to a location on East Fortune Avenue in Fresno. In August of 2020, a fire then broke out at the location. Our cameras were there to capture Fresno Fire's response, but fire officials tell us the cause of the fire has still not been determined. Fast forward to October of 2022, Universal Meditech, still at the Fresno location, fell on hard times over mounting legal troubles. They transferred their assets to Prestige Biotech, a Nevada company founded in 2019 who is listed as a creditor on court docs. Universal Meditech started the bankruptcy process, but it has not been filed. That same month, Prestige, now at the Fresno lab, signed a temporary lease with Alliance, a company specializing in cabinetry, for the warehouse in Reedley, where the lab illegally relocated to. On Halloween of 2022, City of Fresno code enforcement contacted the Fresno County Department of Public Health to check out the East Fortune location in Fresno, as the city was concerned about chemicals at that site. Assistant Director for County Health Joe Prado says they tried reaching out to find out more about the chemicals and overall operations.
As we reached out to them, they didn't provide that information to us. And as we were trying to communicate with them, then we lost contact with them. They moved out of that particular site. We confirmed that with the property owner that they had moved out. So we lost track of them there.
In late December of 2022, the discovery of the lab in Reedley is made as Reedley Code Enforcement Officer Jezelyn Harper notices a hose coming out of the back of what's supposed to be a vacant warehouse on 850 I Street and finds no active business permit. And in January, Prestige began the process of moving back to Fresno, here to this location on North Platella Lane, one that would be ready for them by June. On March 10th, the warehouse in Reedley was marked as unsafe to occupy, as code enforcement noted nearly 1,000 mice, nearly 200 of which were dead, kept in horrific conditions, electrical violations, and improperly stored biohazard waste. After multiple inspection warrants, an abatement warrant was ordered and served on April 12th, and the mice were euthanized. On April 25th, Reedley's fire chief wrote a letter to the city manager detailing a potential disaster for the city and an evacuation plan if needed. From July 5th to the 7th, after an abatement warrant was served, thousands of gallons of medical, biological, and pathogenic waste and material were removed from the lab by county contractors. Now, crews from the city of Reedley are removing equipment from the lab, with the plan being for the CDC to come in after that. And while there is a lot to this timeline, there's still more.
Investigators discovering a horrific scene in suburban California. An illegal biolab, reportedly backed by communist China, has been operating under the radar in Fresno. Authorities say the warehouse was packed with hundreds of mice in inhumane conditions, medical waste, and at least 20 infectious agents. In this lab, they found COVID, HIV, many other diseases. What do we know about not just the lab, but its connections to China?
We don't know much about it. At this point, what we do know is that it was operating illegally. It poses a threat to the people of California and the United States. They were testing for COVID and, like you said, AIDS and everything else. And then the rats and the mice there, 200 of them were found dead out of 1,000. All kinds of medical equipment and medical testing equipment and human blood. And they were testing for a lot of agents. So we don't know what they were doing or why they were doing it, but apparently they're tied to the CCP and to Chinese-linked firms.
How is this type of thing normally regulated? It should be under the guidance of what? And what made this particular one illegal?
Well, I'm sure that you have to get the okay. You have to follow CDC guidelines. You have to be registered and you have to be licensed by the state and probably your local authorities And I'm sure that this lab had none of that, and so they were operating illegally. But that's norm for Chinese-linked companies. They will cut corners and they will not play by the rules. And this is just another example of that. Not only are they not playing by the rules, those companies that operate here in the United States, but around the world, the Chinese-linked companies, because they're tied to the CCP, just don't play by the rules to get an advantage. Whatever advantage they can get, they'll try to get. And that's why, that's one of the things that we're investigating in our committee, how they do business here and around the world. And what we're finding is we don't like what we're seeing.
No doubt. And I know you said you're still in the investigation phase of this, but, after what we now think is a probability that COVID came from a lab leak in China, I'm not sure the answer to this question is operatively different, but I think we still want to know. Is this, as you said, a company linked to CCP looking to just cut corners and is sloppy and haphazard, in which case we could have a big disaster? Or is it more nefarious, where there's a reason they're trying to avoid government oversight, in which case it's more intentional?
That's a great question, and that's something that needs to be found out. What is it that they were doing, and why were they doing it there? And what kind of a threat it poses to, again, like I said, to the people of California, and then the people of the United States. It's no secret that they tried to hide for a long time that the Wuhan lab was not the cause of COVID-19, when in fact, in all probability, 99% it was. And so what are they doing there, and what are they testing for, and what kind of threat does it pose, again, to the people of that area and eventually to the people of the United States? That's something that we have to find out.
Absolutely. This one's on our home soil.